Welcome, guys, to part 11, where we are going to jump ahead to look at Act 4, Scene 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so let's go ensure that you have read the scenes, you listened to them, that you maybe even have watched the scene that I have shared with you. And now we're going to kind of refresh your memories as to what happens and summarize essentially what's going on here. All right. We're at the point in the play where at least I find that a lot of these scenes kind of mesh together. They're so quick and kind of back to back that it's hard to distinguish them from each other. So let's just do a quick recap here. In scene 1, we have Juliet going to the friar and coming up with a plan. In scene 2, we have Juliet going to her father, who bumps the wedding a day early because Juliet consents to marry Paris. In scene 3, then, if you guessed that we would go ahead and have Juliet start initiating that plan of drinking the potion, then you're right, because what happens in scene 3? Juliet goes to bed early. She dismisses the nurse and her mother. So she is all alone. Then she's about to drink the potion. But in her bedchamber, Juliet imagines some of the things that could go wrong. We'll talk about those when we look at the lines. Now, here are some of the things. We'll look at the lines, but Juliet's worried about the plan, that it wouldn't work. She was afraid maybe it would work. The potion might work. Even though she was frightened, she took the friar's herbs, or the potion, and she does this. Just before she takes his herbs, she says quite a long speech, a soliloquy again. She's the only one speaking on stage. And we can evaluate some of the things that she's saying. We're going to take a look at that. These are her worries that eventually she drinks the potion. Now, if you caught this, just in case, there's a little line there where Juliet takes and hides a dagger under her pillow. This is a type of foreshadowing because this is Juliet's backup plan. Should she awaken, or should the potion not work, or whatever, and she awaken the next morning, instead of marry Paris, she is determined to use the dagger. So the dagger's her backup plan there, okay? And that's why she hides it under her pillow. All right. Now, this is foreshadowing because the dagger is going to be, not this specific dagger, but a dagger is going to be important to the story. That's kind of a stupid word, dagger. You know what a dagger is? Like a little knife. A dagger. Maybe you've never heard that word before. I don't know when I first heard that word. You certainly don't use it in everyday language. Okay. Then we move on quite rapidly to Act 4, Scenes 4 and 5. Now, Scene 4 is super quick. It might actually be the quickest, shortest scene in the play. And what's happening there is that it's early the next morning. Capulet has been up all night, like he said he would be, preparing for the wedding. And Paris is just about to come. And so then they have to go awaken Juliet. All right. Everything is going as planned. Now, this is kind of one of those scenes where Shakespeare throws it in to re-emphasize or re-exaggerate Capulet's plan happening. Yet we know that everything will not go to plan. We already know because we were at scene 3 when nobody else was. Okay. Great storytelling. Now, scene 5. This is a great scene. Anxious to get Juliet ready for her wedding, the nurse is ordered to go and enter Juliet's room. The nurse could not wake Juliet. This takes a while for the nurse to try to wake Juliet until she finally draws the curtain and sees that Juliet's dead. Now, she sees she's dead. We know she's not dead. All the other characters think she is dead. So when I say Juliet died, we know the first death is actually not death. We know that. They don't. Now, isn't it clever how Shakespeare tells the reader what's happening and the characters have no clue? So we know what's happening. They don't. That's part of a great storyteller. That's part of a great perspective in a story where you can actually withhold information from other characters and have the audience know, but not the characters. Now here they think Juliet's dead. And it's this great dramatic scene where they enter the room. Okay. The nurse screams. Juliet's parents come in the room one by one and find out that Juliet's dead. Okay, each has their thing to say about this. And my favorite part of this scene is that the friar himself arrives at the Capulet house. he was invited to come and perform the wedding for Paris, and he agrees to wed Juliet in Paris, but he also has this plan or scheme happening in the background. Okay, he comes to perform the wedding. He finds that his plan's working. Why? Because they tell him Juliet's dead, and he acts surprised. Okay, and he comforts everybody. He doesn't tell them, oh yeah, I did that. He doesn't admit that. He's kind of keeping the secret from them. Everyone thought Juliet was dead. The friar then instructs, hey, I'm here anyways. We have this great celebration. Let's make this wedding a funeral. Okay, and now we have a flashback to when Juliet says, if I will wed, if only my wedding is my funeral. And she says that because she's so upset to have to marry Paris, which actually happened. So that was foreshadowing a couple scenes ago. When Juliet's wedding will become her funeral. Her wedding bed will become her funeral pyre, her funeral bier, okay? The place where she is laid in the tomb. Now, leave it to the friar to think of everything. Well, almost everything. He can't think of everything. We know that as smoothly as this plan is going, up to this point, we're very hopeful to be like, okay, the plan is going well, right? She doesn't have to marry Paris, so that is resolved. Things are going well. So now you have to stay tuned to see how they don't go well. How do they not go well? That is our summary of the last part of Act 4. Come and check out my favorite lines. Let's go look at them. All right. Act 4, Scene 3. I guess I only want to go to one section of this. Okay. Juliet knows she has to take the potion. And as soon as she's alone from here onward, so line 14 and onward, she has a lot to say, and she's talking to herself. Okay, so I want to start with this line here, line 20. She says, come vial, and she's about to drink it, but then she stops. She starts hesitating, thinking of everything that could go wrong. Okay, isn't that just like us as humans to worry, to be anxious about stuff, especially in today's world? Anxiety is very high, and Juliet shows anxiety here or worry about a couple things. Now, they're valid worries. Okay. Because what if this mixture do not work at all? Now, there are a couple ways in which it might not work. It might not work like the friar said it was going to work. So let's look at what she says. Okay. Now, she says, shall I be married then tomorrow morning? So what if it doesn't work? What if it's just like water, okay, or juice? I drink it and I go to sleep and I wake up in the morning. Okay. So then her backup plan to that is this. She lays down a dagger. She says, this shall forbid it. Okay, she lays down the dagger. So if I do wake up in the morning, I at least have a backup plan. I'll stab myself. Okay. But then she goes and starts worrying about this. What if it be a poison which the friar had administered to have me dead? What if the friar told me it's a potion, but it's actually a poison because he's scheming to kill me? Because he's done something terrible in marrying me to Romeo, which should be forbidden. And he wants to undo his work. Maybe he's got this secret regret. And what he wants to, like, you see how Juliet's working up all these worries. Maybe it's a poison and the friar's going to kill me. Okay. Yeah. She says, I fear it is. But I don't think it is. He is a holy man. So maybe I shouldn't worry too much about that. But she still works herself up about that worry. And then her last worry, line 29, 30 or so, is this. What if I'm laid in the tomb and I wake up from the potion before Romeo gets there? What if I wake up alone in the dark tomb with rotting Tybalt laying next to me and all the bones of my ancestors? Like, this is a tomb, a monument. That's how wealthy these guys are. In the graveyard, they've got this vast tomb, and you lay the people, the corpses of the people, on pedestals within this underground tomb or something like that. She's laying in there, locked in there, sealed in there, and the rotting, rank corpses of her ancestors. All right. Now she says, what if I go insane? Romeo's not there to save me and I go insane. Now, interestingly, what we're going to see is that the thing she doesn't worry about is the thing that begins to happen, because we think she's covered her bases pretty good here in what she's worried about. But what she actually worries about or doesn't worry about is what actually happens. All right. I'm not going to spoil it. Now, at the end of the day, she goes and drinks the potion. She says, Romeo, Romeo, here's drink. I drink to thee. Cheers, Romeo. Drinks the potion. Out cold. Okay, falls upon her bed. It's pretty immediate. Good scene. Good scene. Okay, let's go to the next scene. And to be honest with you, I have absolutely no lines to highlight from this scene. It's very quick. Okay. It's them, in the morning after the wedding preparations are underway. Now, okay, that's it. Okay. And let's move to the next one. So this one's a little bit more in depth, some more things to look at. So the first line we're going to look at is about line 15 or so, when the nurse comes in, line 14. It takes 14 lines for the nurse to wake up Juliet and then realize that Juliet's not waking up. In the meantime, it's kind of funny because it draws out for the audience the fact that the nurse thinks the nurse is oblivious to the fact that Juliet will never respond because she's asleep or she's dead. Okay, the potion has put her to sleep. And it's funny because the nurse is actually having conversation with Juliet, kind of mocking her and kind of that type of thing. And Juliet doesn't acknowledge any of those things. And the nurse kind of gets alarmed and suddenly cries out, "My lady's dead. My lady's dead." Okay. Of course, everybody else runs into the room. I want to go to line 34 or thereabouts. Okay. Okay. Line 33, pardon me. Friar Lawrence comes in. Now, I think sometimes this can be depicted with Paris coming in and say, "Come, is the bride ready to go to church?" And I think I haven't watched it, but in the clip I showed you, I think Paris says this line. Now that changes it versus Friar Lawrence coming to say this line. But in any case, in this one, Friar Lawrence says the line, and he says, "Come, is the bride ready to go to church?" He fakes ignorance of the fact that he knows Juliet won't be ready to go to church. And I think that is funny for the friar to fake his knowledge. He's hiding the fact that he knows and has instigated that plan. Okay. Then we go a few lines onward, and there it is. Capulet says no. Actually, he says, yes, she's ready to go to church and never to come back. In other words, she's ready to go to church and be buried forever. Okay, they're very sad. They're very sad. He says this: "Death is my son-in-law. Death is my heir." Do you remember the fact that Capulet has only one kid? Juliet. Juliet is the heir to all the Capulet, inheritance. And she is dead now. So as she dies, so does the line. So do the Capulet family. Death is my heir. So who has now? Death is my son-in-law as well. Who has Juliet married? This is supposed to be her wedding morning. Who has she married? She's married Death. And often in medieval cultures, death is personified. It's like the Grim Reaper with the big scythe. And death is a person, a being that comes and captures you and takes you to the afterworld. And Death then is his son-in-law, his heir, his inheritance, his mansion, his everything the Capulet family has goes to Death. Death has taken Juliet, therefore Death's his son-in-law. Death is his heir, his successor. Their family has died off. So this is quite a drastic statement, and I think it means quite a bit, is that, everything was tied up in Juliet, and she's gone now. That's why it was so important for Capulet to arrange such a great marriage to a valid, amazing person in Paris. Okay. Number 71 line 71, I think Friar Lawrence says this. Yes. So they're all saying that, it's so sad, and they're obviously speaking their distress. Each one of them takes a line to share their sadness over Juliet's death. But Friar Lawrence says, "Hey, peace, for shame. Don't be, okay, shame on you guys for being so sad, for mourning so much about the death of Juliet." Okay, he's comforting them in their sorrow. He says this: "Look, heaven has her now. The most you sought was her promotion. Wasn't what you wanted for her promotion the best? Didn't you want her to marry Paris, which would have excelled her status? Didn't you just want her promotion?" Okay, because now that's all you ever wanted for her. But now she has it. She is in heaven. She's been promoted to heaven, and heaven is the highest place any human can be called to. That's what she's meant to be. Okay. It's a little bit warped in our mind because we don't necessarily have this idea that we're created for heaven. But Christian culture says, no, we're created for heaven. Heaven is the highest point that we can be as human beings. We're not made for this earth. We're not made for any glory of this earth, for mansion, status, okay, wealth. That it's all fleeting. When you die, you get your reward in heaven. And that is where Juliet is now. So I wanted to point that out. Friar Lawrence, he is a priest. He's a holy man. And he is explaining and trying to comfort them by saying, look, all you wanted was Juliet's promotion, okay, her status, her comfort. And now she has it. The Lord has given it to her in heaven and has called her to her heavenly home. She has everything she ever wanted. You should be happy. Okay? That's interesting logic. And then lastly, we have this. I like this line here. All things that we ordained festival, Capulet says, line 84. So in other words, we wanted to have a great party, a wedding celebration. We're going to turn that all from their office, so from what they were meant to be used for, to a black funeral. So instead of having a happy wedding, we're going to have a sad funeral. Okay, the instruments or the musicians we hired for happy music are going to play sad music. And the feast that we were going to have for a happy celebration is going to be, like that luncheon that they have after funerals, where people can gather and remember that person. So amazing. You have this wedding. It was planned. You have this celebration, this crowd that was going to gather, a small crowd that was going to gather anyways for a religious ceremony of a wedding. Now they're going to do the religious ceremony of the funeral. So it works well logistically, but I like how that's following through on a foreshadowing Shakespeare gives us a little bit earlier. So they do that off to the church, carry Juliet to her grave. And then you have this funny scene where the musicians, Peter, are interacting, and it's kind of weird. It's like, okay, we had high-class people at the beginning of this scene talking and mourning Juliet's death, and then we have people at the end of the scene who don't really care about Juliet at all, and they're actually low-class people riddling and speaking silly. It's a bit of comic relief to a very heavy scene, and it's interesting that Shakespeare would do this, have these kind of nobodies have a little bit of dialogue at the end of a very heavy, sad, tragic scene to kind of lighten the mood maybe a little bit. I don't know, joke around, okay? But at the end of the day, it's funny because these musicians, they're like, okay, well, we were hired and now they don't want us, so I guess we'll just stick around here. We'll just stick around here until they serve dinner and then we'll eat and go. Okay? Anyways, that wraps up Act 4. Tune in for our next part, our last part, which is going to be looking at the very short act, the final act of the scene, Act 5. Take care. Don't be lame.